Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be reacting to Necrits, the bosses and raids of Riot's MMO. Just to give you guys a quick recap, I am somebody that does not play League of Legends. I have about 5 to 10 hours. I play a little bit of Teamfight Tactics, but that's all. I've watched the ARCANE show, so we are very, very new to all this stuff, and let's go ahead and get into it. All right, everybody, thanks to Necrit as well for doing these videos. Let's go ahead and start it.
Well,
look at those slippers.
It seems like people really enjoy it when I talk about things covered in deep layers of copium. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think we're riding on copium that much. So far, I have not made up a single thing. I am simply presenting things that already exist. And as
do we know why he's always in pajamas?
I started getting some valuable feedback. So before we begin today's video,
right?
Let's have a look at some of the things you just had to point out. For those of you who believe we are starting unhealthy hype, it's fine. As long as we all understand that we are dealing with hypotheticals, and that we will all be bold by the time it comes out. I also got to interview the person who wrote the upcoming massive League of Legends novel, who was confirmed to now be working on the MMO.
Oh,
and
there's a novel? Holy crap.
He told me that, yes, my videos are being passed among
it's just called Ruination?
So you can stop
we should read that
on Twitter now. Also, that novel is insanely good. It's Game of Thrones
September
in
2022.
I am excited for the potential lore of the MMO. Next,
officially added to my Amazon list.
Slippers out of my own volition. Yes, shamans can shapeshift in this universe, just like druids. And yes, Riot confirmed that Legends of Runeterra, which is the card game based on League of Legends, is a big inspiration when it comes to the world building. In case you're wondering what this is about, all the art I am showing you comes from Legends of Runeterra. A game that secretly acts as a massive archive of art that reveals this universe.
It's a good idea.
After covering the world and all the
gets people to play your game
too, the lore supports, we
reacted to both of those.
Potential endgame bosses of this MMO. Now I know what you're thinking. This game isn't even in the playtesting phase. How can we talk about the raids? Well, you see, that's because Riot was probably thinking ahead of time. And they started a bit of a meme in the lore community. They gave this universe way too many world-ending threats. The downside of this is that, yeah, there was a time when we didn't know which world-ending threat was the real world-ending threat.
So we got like
it
the
was
Void,
a battle between who's the biggest evil.
the Watchers,
the benefits are obvious. You have a lot of meaningful enemies that you can remove before you start limiting your storytelling. And in fact, many of these big storylines are written with all the back doors open.
I like the artwork on that one. Obviously the green screen.
Them for an event in League of Legends, or it is stories that were left open purposefully for the MMO. And that's what this video is going to be about. Originally, I wanted to show you 10 storylines that were left open and which would lead into raids. But if you look at the length of this video, yeah, I cut it down to only 7. So without further ado, let's get on.
So wait, what about the other 3?
We are essentially talking about the world of League of Legends, especially if you have seen our last 2 MMO videos. It goes without saying that this world has material for hundreds of instances.
I believe
This means that it's really up to Riot to cherry pick which ones they want to do. And since in this video I am only going to mention 7 of these, it is highly likely I am not going to mention the one that you would like to see. But if you feel strong about your own idea about the dungeon, feel free to comment about it below.
What in the world is that?
This is all valuable feedback for the developers.
Are they just dragons?
Anyway, the 7 raids I picked are based on one simple fact. Their stories and setting are perfectly fit for a raid environment. Be it because their stories are set up for
Demacia reminds me of Stormwind.
Or because some of these villains already have a cast of supporting bosses for the raid. Or simply because the battles would be really cool. And because showing is better than telling, let's start with the first raid. One with such a good setup, the raid essentially writes itself.
Okay, what do we have?
The Ascension of Mount Targon.
So, Mount Targon.
As you may remember, Mount Targon was created by the Celestial God to serve as a gateway to the Celestial
Who would be
realms.
the boss, though?
And people decide to climb this
Aurelian Soul?
for a variety
That'd be weird.
of reasons. Even though only about 1 in 10,000 makes it to the peak, some people try to climb the mountain because they want to be deemed worthy and become a celestial demigod.
My boy Pantheon,
while, for
Atreus.
example, the Demacians send their criminals here to die trying to climb the mountain. This
Did not know that.
sentence is called the Crown of Stone. And yes, of course, you can't really force the criminals to climb the mountain unless you go there with them. So
that reminds me a little bit of Game of Thrones when they send them to the wall.
Most criminals just flee and start a new life elsewhere. Also, at the peak of the mountain, we can find Aurelian Soul, the Star Forger.
That
the
sassy
reason why
mofo.
he is here is because of the crown he is wearing. Long story short, thousands of years ago, when people noticed that Aurelian was crossing the stars, they started worshipping him, which boosted Aurelian's ego. And they crafted him a crown of Celestial Star Metal. Aurelian, already being quite egoistic, donned the crown, only to realize it was a mind-controlling device.
So we reacted to his voice lines, and oh my word, does this man have the biggest ego. Even when he's trapped. Even though he's trapped, this man has a big ego.
In reality, it was the Celestial Aspects who wanted to hold Aurelian's power the entire time. Now, to be fair, the Aspects are using Aurelian's powers for good cause. They are using the Celestial Fire to purge the void from Runeterra. But still, it is the Celestial Aspects who enslaved Aurelian.
Yeah, it's a little messed up, but you know.
Riot can make up a billion reasons why we should raid this place. Though I doubt we would be able to fight Aurelian Soul at the very peak. You know, he is made out of space. But maybe we need to reach the peak to borrow some of his powers. Or
he's also technically like considered the strongest League of Legends character, is he not?
Maybe we need to kill a rampant aspect. Or maybe we just need to reach the Celestial Realm for another reason. Simply said, it is
I like the artwork there.
For this raid
I don't know what those are, but just Celestials, I guess.
What's more interesting is the setting of this raid. At different levels, the mountain presents you with different enemies. So let's start with what would happen once you enter the raid. You start at the bottom of the mountain, where you are very likely to meet
That's beautiful artwork as well.
Chip is an already established character who shows newcomers the wonders of the mountain.
Yo, Chip is adorable.
So you follow him around until we arrive at our first boss, the living mountain itself. This place has plenty of earth elementals who came alive due to the mountain's magic. Now,
that looks like a fun boss.
Don't confuse the earth elementals with Malphite. Malphite comes from Ishtal, which is quite far away from Targon.
We don't know anything about Malphite.
Also, he's a good guy, we don't want to fight him.
He is a good guy, okay.
But from the earth elementals who would likely protect this place, we have, for example, the Blue Sentinel, who also appears in League of Legends.
Okay,
but
Blue
the biggest of them all is the Stonebreaker. This one would be an excellent introductory boss. You know, you're fighting the mountain itself. And yes, I know
I think that'd be a really good boss.
But you can shrink him for gameplay purposes.
Yeah.
WoW has been notoriously known for inconsistent boss sizes, and it's fine. Anyway, after Stonebreaker, we go further up the mountain.
Why was one so tiny?
We start meeting all the lesser dragons and their worshippers. The coolest of these are the White Flame Dragons. There is also an important dragon who serves as a beacon to the other dragons, called Inviolus Vox.
So I have questions about dragons. How many do we know the exact number of dragons that exist? How have dragons become to exist? Like, I have a lot of questions about the dragons in the world of Runeterra.
One that could likely become a boss would be the Eclipse Dragon. That's because this dragon is quite precious to the natives on the mountain, which would be boss number 3.
Do they all live on Mount Targon as well?
We start encountering the tribes. There are the Lunari who hide in the shadows because they are being suppressed and they are relatively friendly, just like the Rakor. But the Solari are fanatics who blindly protect the Celestial Realms at any cost. Even in the cinematic you can see how they are protecting the gateway that is leading to the peak of the mountain. And even though it would be cool if Riot allowed us to fight Leona herself, champions in League of Legends tend to wear pretty thick plot armor.
She probably wouldn't,
instead, it would be cool if we could fight one of Leona's champions.
We probably interact with Leona.
Known as Daylight Spear, Ravun. Anyway, after defeating the Solari protecting the gateway, we would get near the peak. The first one to meet us here would be the Infinite Mind Splitter.
Whoa.
This is a legendary draconic creature with a very unique ability.
That artwork
it
is
told
crazy.
That its gaze gives you so much knowledge and insight that your mind
How does all of this
crumbles beneath it.
exist?
So
Okay, hold on. We're 9 minutes into this video. I had no idea any of this stuff existed on Mount Targon. This is insane. How was all of this? When was this created? When was all of these creatures and all of this lore about Mount Targon created? Was it from Runeterra? Like,
Beating this boss
crazy.
would be all about getting buffs from it, while being careful not to get too many buffs, because it would kill you. And then, after getting past the Infinite Mind Splitter, we would arrive at the last stand of the mountain, the Arbiter of the Peak. The last guardian standing in the center of the peak, separating mortals from the celestial realms.
Okay.
This is the creature that leads the mortals who survive the climb directly to the celestials.
Okay.
In fact, that's what you can see here. He is guiding Tiari the Traveler to the celestial realms, where they would become the Traveler. But also, in case of emergency, the Arbiter serves as a guardian against unwanted visitors.
Right, that would be
Two
us
things
in
could
the
happen
game.
here. Either we fight the Arbiter to get its approval to pass into the celestial heavens.
Okay.
In this case, perhaps the Arbiter can test us with the lesser celestial beings. Or we simply have to destroy the Arbiter. In this case, the Arbiter would probably fight us with the golems. And finally, perhaps after beating the Arbiter, we are granted access to the celestial realms. And while, again, I doubt we would be able to fight Aurelian Soul,
we'd probably talk to him.
We could fight one of his creations that is endangering the world.
Okay.
We have two of them that
he has
stand
creations?
out. The first creation is simply known as the Great Beyond. Aurelian Soul himself calls it his magnum opus. This is essentially a smaller celestial dragon created in Aurelian's image. So this would be like fighting Aurelian himself, except this would make sense. The one I believe might be a bit more appreciated, however, would be the one known as the Scourge.
The Scourge, it's like a Hydra.
Celestial being created by Aurelian himself, but League of Legends players might recognize this one as the pure celestial version of Baron Nashor. It is believed that the physical Baron was born out of the pure image. So, the Scourge being the final boss would be a really cool nod towards
this is
the League of Legends
crazy.
community.
I have to pause. We are only in Mount Targon, and there is so much potential for raid bosses. It's insane.
See what
Dungeons,
I mean?
raids,
I just
whatever.
made up a 7-boss raid in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
and I skipped a lot of details just so this video wouldn't be too long.
Wow,
there are the celestial beasts, the demons trying to consume the heavens, the dragon roost near the peak where dragons are born,
the dragons,
starhounds, Esmus, the breath of the world, and so on.
The breath
Designing
of the world.
this raid was simple because the lore and the setup is already there. Once again, I did not make anything up.
From the Lunari
All of this already exists.
Who is that?
In
Is
the
that the
universe.
Starhound?
And Runeterra has a lot more places just
Who is
like
that?
this one. So, let's have a look at raid number 2.
All right, where are we going now?
The one
Dude, that's
raid
so interesting.
I know as a fact people would love to see is a Darkin raid. You can pull this off in a lot of different ways. But since the roots of the Darkin lore are in Shurima, the raid would most likely be in the deserts. Super quickly, in case you forgot, the Shuriman Empire rose to power after it started using the Sun Disk to reflect celestial magic into their soldiers, and turning them into the god warriors known as the Ascended.
We got a Renekton,
the Ascended
Azir,
were guaranteed immortality.
Nasus.
However, their minds were as fragile as they were before.
Right.
After these Ascended fought the maddening void beasts released by their neighbors, they started going a little bit mad. But their minds finally snapped when their emperor died too, and there was no one to give them
he was
directions.
betrayed.
The story goes that a Darkin known as Zolani, who used to be a great healer, invented blood magic and used it to heal the other Darkin, by which she also infused them with the blood magic, with a secret plan to use the blood magic later to control them all. This was Zolani's secret plan to stop the rampaging Darkin. Unfortunately, the Celestials noticed that the Darkin were very dangerous, and they started sealing them inside special weapons.
Right, Zoe,
the sad
right?
part is, Zolani herself was also sealed inside her blades. So since Zolani was sealed away, there was nobody to control the others. And as a nice bonus, the remaining Darkin were now empowered with blood magic. Fortunately, in the end, the Celestials sealed all the remaining Darkin inside their weapons too. But stupidly enough, the Celestials let mortals to safeguard these Darkin weapons. So of course, some people were tempted to pick up the weapons and use them for their wars.
Right.
At which point, the Darkin immediately dominated the minds and bodies of those who picked them up.
Right.
So yes, these rampaging god warriors managed to free themselves.
Right. Okay.
So now, let's quickly go through those
So who would be
serve
some of the
as
raid
big
bosses?
raid bosses.
Yeah.
Perhaps the most famous one, and
Aatrox?
as far as we know, the most powerful one is Aatrox.
We wouldn't be able to beat him, though.
After Aatrox was sealed away,
Or I guess he would die and just come back.
picked up by a random warrior in the north. Of course, Aatrox immediately dominated the warrior's body, and since then he's been using blood magic to drain the dead around him.
Okay.
And make himself
He's been with
bigger.
the same body,
That's what
though.
you can see in his
Oh, he's
old cinematic.
making himself
he
bigger.
Starts small, but gets bigger the more things he kills.
Oh.
In fact, it got to such a point where Aatrox became the only being to ever kill a celestial god.
Right.
As I mentioned in the last video, Aatrox stabbed someone wielding the power of the aspect of war so hard, the aspect of war was wiped from the stars. So out of all the Darkin, Aatrox is the ultimate end boss.
Right.
Besides Aatrox, as mentioned, the
Who else
second
would there
most
be?
important Darkin is Zolani.
Zolani,
Now,
okay.
Zolani has canonically not returned yet, but Legends of Runeterra is teasing that she might come back in the future.
They could do it
Also,
for
as
in
a
the
fun
MMO.
fact, in the most recent cinematic, you can see that Talia and Kaisa arrive in front of the faceless statue of Zolani.
Oh.
Next, there is also Varus, a
Varus.
Darkin who was sealed inside a bow inside a well.
But he doesn't
And
seem
got
like
freed
he's
after
bad,
two
is
hunters
he?
fell into the well. So now, Varus's body is actually occupied by 3 souls. The 2 hunters and the Darkin.
And the Darkin,
One
yeah.
could say he's the embodiment of 2.5 men. And there is also Kain, the one holding the scythe of a Darkin known as Rast.
We haven't, as of the time of this reaction, we haven't reacted to Kane yet, but he has been recommended to me as another voice line reaction.
As far as we know, Kain is pretty good at resisting Rast's power. So I doubt Rast would be freed.
Interesting.
Also, Kain is a League of Legends champion. So in order for Rast to come out, Kain would need to die.
And we don't want to do
that's
that.
possible with all the plot armor.
Yeah,
But we're still not done yet. Next, from the lesser-known Darkin, there is also Harazi, who was sealed inside a small emblem. Naganeka of Zurita, who was sealed inside a giant ballista. As you can see, she looks a little bit like a chicken. And that's because it is believed that a chicken touched the ballista and the Darkin took over the chicken's body.
Oh, that's
and lastly,
cool.
there is Targon,
Hold on.
who was sealed
I like the chicken ballista. I like the chicken ballista a lot.
Zurita, who was sealed inside a giant ballista.
Okay, hold on.
As you can see, she looks a little bit like a chicken.
Yeah.
That's because it is believed that a chicken touched the ballista and the Darkin
Oh,
took
that's
over
so
the
cool.
chicken's
I don't know
body.
why I like
and
the
lastly,
chicken ballista.
there is Tarosh, who was sealed inside a massive halberd. The reason why this Darkin raid would work is because all the Darkin have a common goal. They all hate Zolani. They see her as a betrayer who was trying to control them. So in this raid, we would likely fight the other Darkin as we are trying to get to Zolani. And after we kill her, we would face Aatrox as the final boss.
Oh man,
Since
that'd be a
Darkin
crazy
wars
boss
began
fight.
with Aatrox and Zolani starting a civil war. Also, it turns out that Aatrox was the general of all the other Darkin. So killing Aatrox would be the perfect end to the Darkin.
Aatrox would be a
But
crazy boss
let's not forget
fight.
that Riot is already teasing a new Darkin. The next champion in League of Legends might be a dog that picked up a Darkin dagger. And if you're wondering why we would raid this place, first of all, the Darkin are pretty one-sided bad guys. But we could be led here by Nasus and Sivir. Nasus is an Ascended who
we don't know much about
Sivir, so he would be likely happy to put down his former brothers and sisters.
Okay, that makes sense for
Sivir
Nasus.
is holding the very first blade to be ever used to seal a Darkin. So once again...
Wait, let me hear that again.
So he would be likely happy to put down his former brothers.
What does she have?
And Sivir is holding the very first blade to be ever used to seal a Darkin.
What Darkin did she seal?
So once again, the lore is already there.
Very interesting.
And aesthetically, we have a good idea of what it would look like too. We would start outside around the temples of Zolani, which look creepy and corrupted. And later we delve beneath them to where the land is tainted by blood and death.
Currently, Sivir has
next
pizzas
raid,
in Teamfight Tactics.
In Shurima, because if there is a raid, I would personally love to see.
Where would we go next?
Is the raid on Narimazeth, a city that is in ruins. That's because Narimazeth was the place where Shurimans tried to build
the first time.
very first Sun Disk.
Yeah, the first time they tried.
This first version failed, and instead of the Ascended, it was only producing the Bakai, which are broken, twisted versions of the Glorious Ascended. And in the end, the entire city collapsed onto itself.
So there could be a raid there.
After that, the Shurimans tried to build the Sun Disk again, but this time in the middle of the desert. But now, why would we want to raid these ruins? Well, that's because this city is being rebuilt by Xerath, the most powerful arcane mage on Runeterra.
Did not know that.
Whose body was turned into pure arcane energy by the Sun Disk itself.
And he betrayed Azir, I know that.
Long story, shorter. When Emperor Azir was a child, he became friends with a nameless slave. And despite slaves being forbidden from having names, he called him Xerath. Throughout the years, the two became as close as brothers, studying culture and history whenever possible. Later on, despite his father hating him, Azir became his only surviving son. So unless his mother gave birth to another child, he would become the emperor anyway. Well, in secret, Xerath simply made sure she would not give birth to another child. Usually he did it by corrupting the infant in her womb.
That's messed up.
Because it turns out, this entire time, Xerath was trying to break his roots from slavery.
That's crazy.
And now he had the ambition to gain power himself.
Wow.
So he justified these murders by telling himself that he was protecting a friend.
Okay, Xerath is a bad guy.
Despite his efforts, the queen did give birth to another child.
Who?
So Xerath summoned a storm and let lightning kill the queen and the child. Eventually, all these events led to Azir becoming the crowned emperor of Shurima with Xerath by his side.
Wow, wait.
From this
does he not know Xerath did that?
Xerath was waiting for Azir to finally get rid of slavery. Which never happened. Despite Azir being the most beloved emperor in history,
come on, Azir.
He allowed slavery to keep going on.
Okay, Azir, that's messed up, bro.
Angered Xerath. At the end of the story, the emperor was chosen to become an Ascended himself. But during the ceremony, when the Sun Disk was focusing its power into Azir's body, Xerath was so full of his BS, he incinerated him and forced all the power of the Sun Disk into himself. This resulted in Xerath's body being turned into pure arcane energy, the death of Azir, and the collapse of the Sun Disk and the destruction of the entire empire.
Is Xerath a
You wanna know the
playable
twist
character?
at the end? If you read the story from Azir's perspective, you learn that he did want to remove slavery. He just wanted it to be a surprise. In fact, he even announced it just as Xerath betrayed him.
That's crazy.
But Xerath already murdered way too many people.
Yeah,
so
too late.
Even though he really wanted to stop, it was too late to go back. So Xerath doomed the entire empire. And yes, because the emperor died, Xerath is also technically the reason why the Darkin exist. I already mumbled about the lore for way too long, so just know this. Nasus's brother, Renekton, bound Xerath in a sarcophagus, and he locked himself with Xerath in a tomb.
Wait a minute. Okay, two things. Did not know Nasus and Renekton were brothers. And also, Renekton, MVP, locking himself in a tomb with Xerath.
Years later, scavengers opened the tomb and released Renekton and Xerath.
They're both out.
As I said, Xerath is currently in Narimazeth. And he is actually trying to rebuild the original Sun Disk.
Yo, very cool story. I'm glad he went, he dove deep into the Azir and Xerath story, because I always got the gist of it was Xerath just betrayed Azir and killed him, and then we got the Darkin. But that little breakdown was awesome.
We don't really know why he is doing it, but I think it's safe to assume that he just wants more power. But you know what it smells like to me?
Yeah.
It smells like a big old setup for a future raid.
Yeah.
In Legends of Runeterra, you can see Xerath with all his worshippers.
Oh yeah.
You can also see all the mini-bosses around him. Especially, we know about Demi Yin, the Unbound. But besides all of these heralds and acolytes, this raid would also have the Bakai, the original experimental Ascended who come from this city.
They can make a boss out of one of those.
Also, we would fight Renekton himself.
Wait, why?
Because it turns out, after hundreds of years of being locked in a tomb with Xerath, Xerath broke his mind by whispering to him that Nasus betrayed him. He
No, Renekton!
Purposefully led him to rot in the darkness.
No!
That's why Renekton is quite crazy these days.
Oh, man.
It all goes back to Xerath.
Okay.
Who might be the ultimate villain of Shurima.
Yeah, that makes sense. He made the Darkin and betrayed Azir.
Why don't we play off of the success of ARCANE?
Oh, cool.
No spoilers, don't worry.
Cool.
Previously, when I told you about the cities Piltover and Zaun, I showed you that at the very bottom of that place you can find the ruins of an ancient Shuriman city.
Yes.
But that will become just a dungeon. The one that would become an interesting raid would be the Empire of Renada-Glask. After I mention this, I know a lot of you will be confused.
Yeah.
After all, Renada-Glask is just a rich baron from Zaun. How can she support an entire raid?
Okay.
Well, in this case, it is all built on two factors.
I couldn't see a raid being in Zaun.
First of all, Renada is way too big of a character to be removed in just a dungeon. But more importantly, Renada-Glask released this year, and she was released as yet another big villain, after all the other already established villains in Piltover and Zaun.
So we're gonna have to react to her apparently, because apparently I've just been reacting to like all like gods and villains and stuff in the voice lines.
She simply
I don't know much about her.
feels like a setup for something in the future. Because after already having Singed and Urgot and Victor as villains in Zaun, Riot didn't need to make up another. It feels obvious they released Renada to be a villain supervising the other bad guys of Zaun. Before her, Zaun didn't really have a main villain.
I mean,
so
Silco in the show, I
she
guess,
is now
but
filling that role. Her lore
died.
is making her
Spoilers.
the main boss of Zaun. Her raid would be very clear in its structure. We would follow the detective case of Caitlyn and Vi as we try to find her hideout. Perhaps
cool.
Camille, an extremely dangerous assassin from Piltover,
I like
would be
Camille.
also interested in killing her.
I like her aesthetic.
From that point on, we would literally raid her place with the Wardens. As a nice bonus, people would love to see the popular champions Zeri and Echo on our side.
Of course.
Both of which are kids from the streets who have destroyed her warehouses before. But the last puzzle piece is, why would we raid Renada?
Right.
Well, the
What's the
Glask
threat?
family owns Glask Industries,
Okay.
which is the most luxurious brand in Piltover and Zaun. They sell perfumes and really fancy limb replacements. And unfortunately, this brand reflects a bit of real life, since these fancy formulas are developed down in Zaun, using slave labor. But there is also a darker twist. All their products are infused with a chemical formula, which can turn their customers into mindless rampaging husks at any moment.
So she's
It's
just
kinda
like a
Apple.
She's
Now,
kind of it's kind of like Apple. She seems like she's just like a crazy crime boss kind of. Like she's obviously more than a crime boss. It's a little bit more impactful than that, but she's kind of like just a cool crime boss raid that you could have in Zaun.
Renata is a recent champion. That's all her story really has. She is probably the most powerful Baron in Zaun.
What is this?
Who can make an entire city fall into chaos with the press of a button. And now we're just waiting to see when she would unleash
She's super powerful.
If you ask me, I normally wouldn't think that this would be a great raid. But this would be very different from raiding dragons, which would actually give it the benefit of changing environment. But also remember, this is riding off of ARCANE's fame. And I doubt Riot would pass on that opportunity. That's why I feel confident we will meet Renada in the MMO.
So I'm going to pause. So I do agree with him, mostly on the factor of, actually, I guess both points. So yes, the ARCANE factor, and then two, The fact that it's a totally different raid, it'd be a totally different raid style from the others, being that it's not like these giant monsters or celestials or, you know, ascended or anything like that. It's just like crime bosses and villains of Zaun. I like the different
now we are diving
aspect.
into the top 3 raids.
Okay.
I am extremely confident that some form of these
I don't remember this guy's
will
name.
be in the MMO. That's for 2 reasons.
Okay.
First of all, these big villains are way too big to be ignored. We are talking about characters in the style of Arthas Menethil. But also, their
Viego.
lore turns them into world-threatening enemies that have to be dealt with.
Right.
With the first of these being Viego,
Yeah.
the Ruined
That
King.
makes sense, 100%.
There is not a sliver of a doubt we will see the Ruined King in the MMO. You can point a gun to my head, tell me to guess a villain in this MMO, and I will smile knowing that I survived. It would be unimaginable to ignore him.
Yeah, he reminds me
Now,
of the Lich King, I
issue
guess,
lying
sort
in
of,
front
from
me
World of
right
Warcraft.
now is that Viego's story is massive. On top of the normal story he has in League of Legends, he got his own book that is 400 pages long.
We need to read that.
The entire
I'm excited
RPG
to read
game
that.
called Ruined King, which is focusing on his reawakening.
I'm thinking
and
about
League
streaming
of
that.
Legends got its own in-game event that was focusing on pushing his lore forward, which also
Okay.
included 3 cinematics. Right now, Viego
True.
has the most lore out of any champion in this universe.
It makes sense for him to be in the
So let
game.
me summarize it as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Viego was a Camavoran prince who was forced into becoming the king at an early age. Because of this, he was not ready to become a king, and many would not consider him a really good king. Still being a teenager, he often threw tantrums in the style of Kylo Ren. To keep the kingdom from
I
crumbling,
see the connection.
he relied on his 2 advisors, Callista and Nuno Necrit of Camavor. Yes, that's the character named after me. Eventually, Viego met
Wait, Callista
the love of
was
his
one
life,
of his...
Isolde, a woman whom he loved very, 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 very
Too much.
deeply.
Too much, apparently.
He loved her so much that he would do anything for her.
Yeah, a little too much.
But she didn't abuse it. Isolde was actually a very good queen. For the
Okay.
majority of Viego's ruling, he waved the kingdom's problems away just so he could be with Isolde. Until the day someone tried to poison Viego to finally remove him from the throne, and instead they poisoned Isolde.
Oh, okay.
This is where Viego's dark side really started to show.
Yeah.
After trying absolutely everything imaginable, nobody was able to heal his queen.
He even reminds me of Kylo Ren
angry
with the hair.
depression started taking over him. After weeks of desperate searching, Viego found out that there may
the Blessed
exist a
Isles.
hidden place called the Blessed Isles,
Oh.
which held the sacred blessed waters which could heal anything. And so he sent Callista away to find the Isles.
Oh, is that why she's there?
After a long adventure, Callista succeeded, and she confirmed that the Blessed Waters did indeed exist.
Okay.
So on the next trip, Callista brought the Queen and the King and their soldiers with them, so that they could all heal the Queen and be happy ever after. But of course, there was a dark twist. The Queen died before they arrived on the Isles. And the priests confirmed that they can heal anything, as long as the person is alive. But that didn't stop Viego from trying. So after the priests denied him entrance to the waters, Viego massacred everyone who stood in his way, and following a creepy warden called Thresh, he arrived at the waters and dunked the queen in. For a moment, the waters did resurrect the queen. But then she was turned into a wraith, who killed Viego with his own blade, which caused his soul to be absorbed by the blade. I'm skipping a lot of details here, so just know that yes, the blade can absorb souls.
Okay,
We'll actually
did not
talk
know
about
that.
the blade in the next MMO video, whenever that one comes out.
Viego would be such a cool raid boss.
After Viego was killed with his own blade, everything exploded in necromantic magic. His queen's soul was shattered into fragments, and the entire place was turned into the Shadow
Isles. Yeah.
For 1,000 years, Viego's soul stayed there in the blade. Until the Pirate King Gangplank was told by Thresh that he could totally pick up the blade. His mind was totally strong enough to resist the power of the king. Spoiler
Gangplank? Wait a minute. Gangplank released Viego? I had no idea.
alert, it wasn't And the moment Gangplank picked up the blade, his mind and body was dominated by Viego,
I had
who
no
then
idea.
used
What?
that body to fully release himself back into the world. After that, even though everyone's been dead for 1,000 years,
Right.
Viego still wanted to bring his wife back.
Come on, man.
And so he started to unleash the undead with the Black Mist all around the world.
Right.
In an attempt to find all the fragments of his queen's
Whoa,
soul.
that artwork's nuts.
Eventually, he succeeded, and he actually managed to bring the queen's soul back. But immediately after that, he was defeated by the Sentinels of Light.
Right.
Remember the undead hunting class from the last video? That's them. And not only did they permanently destroy the queen's soul, because the queen didn't actually want to be resurrected.
Right.
But Viego's entire story arc ended with him being teleported back to his homeland called Kamavor, where he was banished until the present days. You can actually see the
Gwen
end
did
of
it,
the
right?
storyline in the cinematic
Gwen and
called
Senna.
Absolution.
Yeah.
And this is why Viego is going to be an incredible boss in the MMO.
Yeah, I think
He
so.
does have a lot of story behind him. But more importantly, this entire time we have only seen his young, reckless personality, where he
Right.
acts like a child throwing tantrums.
Oh, but like maybe he'll be
as
an
he's
adult now,
constantly
a
trying
little
to
bit more
help
mature.
someone he is obsessively in love with. But the thing is, his entire life he was chasing his queen. He was ready to
But now
go
she's
beyond
gone.
death just to be with her. But now he was imprisoned after learning that the queen didn't want to be with him.
True.
But also after her soul was permanently destroyed.
Right.
So once Viego is unleashed from his prison again,
He's gonna be even
instead
more
of a cocky
pissed.
teenager, we are going to have a pissed off king who has nothing to lose.
True.
And that transformation into the Dark King is something I really wanna see.
Cool.
And you can only imagine what the raid is gonna look
Who would be like some smaller
Hordes of
mini
risen
bosses though?
Kamavoran soldiers,
Okay.
ancient undead dragons brought
Oh,
from
yeah.
his homeland,
Okay, there you go.
the legendary Rasa the Sunderer, and even more legendary Hecarim of the Iron Order.
Oh, Hecarim.
But there is also Commander Ledros, or maybe Karthus the Death Singer.
But Hecarim's
And
a playable
finally
character,
Thresh,
right?
the one who caused all of this to happen.
Thresh, yeah.
The hidden master of puppets in the shadows.
Thresh would have to be
Simply
involved.
said, Viego has a lot of meaningful enemies serving him.
And this would be all
And
probably
the
on the
raid
Shadow Isles, I guess.
will be glorious. Side note, in the
Very cool.
distant future, I kinda wanna cover the entire story of Viego. Wish me luck. For the next raid, we are not delving too far away
Alright.
from the undead
What's
theme,
next?
because it's time to cover the most brutal badass warrior this universe had ever seen. Super quickly, just for clarity. Viego's deathly magic is really undeath in its true meaning. When he's turning his enemies into undead souls, it's more like he is preventing them from dying, and he's
Okay.
turning them into somewhat living wraiths instead. So he's not really the master of death. As you'll see, that title goes to Mordekaiser.
Ah.
His story begins as a
We just
warlord
reacted to his
known
voice
as
lines
Zaun Uzal.
recently.
During his time, the main continents were occupied by barbaric tribes.
This makes sense.
Zaun Uzal
Mordekaiser.
believed that by killing as many people as possible, he would please the gods of the afterlife. And so, he forged an empire in blood and death. As
Yeah.
his life was near the end, he took great satisfaction in knowing that he would sit at the gods' tables, in the glorious halls of bones. However, when he died, he found no glory waiting for him.
Yeah, there is basically
Instead,
nothing.
Zaun Uzal stood in an empty grey wasteland, with an occasional soul drifting by.
But now he has an army
watched
there.
as these lesser spirits faded into the fog, unmade and lost in time.
Yeah.
But Zaun Uzal refused to fade. His will, tempered by rage and torment, held him together. In other words, he was simply too angry to die.
That reminds me of, okay, so Too Angry to Die, another Star Wars reference, reminds me of Darth Maul.
Started listening to the disembodied whispers around him, and he learned this was Oknun, the language of the dead.
Yeah.
Slowly,
Okay.
he came up with a plan. He began whispering temptations into the veil between realms, promising power to any who would listen.
I'm glad
And
we just
sure
read
enough,
Mordekaiser's
he
story
managed
recently.
to tempt a few cultists into bringing him back to life.
Right, some sorcerers.
Lacking any flesh or bone, He told the cultists to bind his spirit to metal plates,
And
forged
iron,
in the
yeah.
likeliness of his old armor. And so he rose as the
And then he kills
Revenant
them
of
all
Iron
after they
and
revive
Hate.
him.
No longer called San Uzal, but rather, in Oknun, he was Mordekaiser. Originally, these cultists wanted to use Mordekaiser as a weapon in their trivial wars.
He's like, nah.
But instead, Mordekaiser killed them all, and he used their souls to forge himself a brutal
Nightfall.
mace called Nightfall.
Yay, I know
With
the
that,
name of it.
Mordekaiser's
I'm proud of
second
myself.
conquest of the world started.
Yep,
But
okay.
this time, he was wielding necromantic magic. All his enemies were confused because it seemed like Mordekaiser only cared about massacre and destruction.
Right,
Entire
it does seem that way.
generations perished under his campaign. But in reality, there was far more to Mordekaiser's real plan. At the center of his empire, he raised the Immortal Bastion, which became
Okay.
the largest structure on Runeterra. And he
Right.
used that place to gather information about spirits and death, be it by capturing and studying demons, or torturing Yordles until he could harvest their secrets. He
Oh.
did everything in his power to understand the realms beyond.
Right.
Eventually, Mordekaiser became such a tyrant the entire continent banded against him. But when
that's
he
how he
was
was defeated,
ultimately
right?
defeated,
Yeah.
it was not because of his enemies, but rather he was betrayed from his inner circle.
Yeah,
The
okay.
Immortal Bastion had a secret cabal led by a witch we know as LeBlanc.
LeBlanc.
They managed to separate Mordekaiser's spirit from his armor and seal the empty armor in a hidden place. As a result, without his
that's
physical
how it
vessel,
happened.
Mordekaiser was forced out of the physical realm.
I see.
What none of the cultists knew, however, is that all of this was according to Mordekaiser's plan. The entire time he was forging a destiny greater than the halls of
He has an
Bones.
army in the other
When
side
he
now.
finally returned to the empty wasteland of the afterlife,
Mm-hmm.
he was met by the hundreds of thousands who died under his reign.
Right,
Prevented by his dark magic, they would never fade. They
right.
would be his eternal army bound to his will.
Yeah,
But
he'll be
even
a
the
really
weakest
cool
of
raid
the
boss.
spirits were given purpose. Just like he used the souls of the cultists to forge his mace,
Mm-hmm.
the weakest of the souls would become the building blocks of his afterworld.
I wonder if we'd go
And
to the
so
afterworld to fight
Mordekaiser
him,
became
probably,
the
maybe.
king of the afterlife.
Or maybe he'd
And
come
even
into
though he
our
was
world.
cast
Who
out,
knows?
With his physical vessel being banished in the Immortal Bastion,
Yeah, maybe
in
that'll get
Noxus,
released.
He is already planning on how to return.
Yeah,
And
okay.
once he does so, after so many people were fed into his realm, he would be so powerful nobody would know how to stop
Yeah,
him.
he'd be insane.
Since that is where his story cut off, you know that this is a setup for
He
the
has
future.
to come back.
Even
yeah.
in League of Legends, sometimes Mordekaiser is joked about as a raid boss. Once he
Hmm.
starts rolling, you need the entire team to get him down. And Riot would be foolish not to
Yeah.
use him as a badass raid boss in the MMO.
Yeah,
Especially since we
100%.
already know some of the other characters that we would see in his raid.
Who would that be?
When Mordekaiser was conquering the world the second
don't know.
time, he had two demons which he used as his companions.
Wait, what?
These would be Tybolk, the giant fire demon, and Atakan, an iron-bound shadow demon.
Atakan. Oh, dude, Atakan looks awesome.
To get to him, we
Okay.
would probably have to get past the one who banished him, LeBlanc, and I wouldn't be surprised if we also met Vigar, the Yordle Mordekaiser tormented to get his Yordly secrets. Finally,
Okay.
we would likely fight alongside Swain, one of the leaders of
Alongside
Noxus
Swain?
who is actively trying to root out the dark magics from Noxus. So yeah, maybe Mordekaiser's
Yeah,
story
cool.
is not as long as Viego's.
It's
but
not.
Mordekaiser is built on
But he's pretty
brutal
simple and
conquest.
pretty strong.
His story is simply badass. And
Yeah.
you bet that's what people want to fight.
Very cool.
And this takes us to the last raid I want to show you.
Freljord?
Not only is this raid inevitable, but it
Probably.
is going to be the final raid before Riot starts to get sweaty about their future.
Sweaty.
Because from that point on, they would be forced into making up new enemies.
Yeah.
And that's usually when the lore of MMOs crumbles. With the
Not wrong.
ultimate endgame in Runeterra being the battle against the end of everything.
So, like,
The Watchers of the Void.
the Watchers and the
Now,
Freljord.
I know
Alright,
we already
yeah.
quickly summarized the story of the Watchers when we talked about the world. But we need to quickly do it again, because if they get their own raid, it
Could
would
always
be
use
a
a
really
refresher.
cool merging of multiple storylines of this universe.
Yeah.
Basically, at the beginning of everything, there was nothing.
And then
just
light.
Dark, empty void. Until there was a spark of light. This spark of light illuminated the darkness and revealed creepy entities we know as the Watchers.
Right.
Who, before this event, didn't even know about their own existence. Of course, since this first light woke the Watchers up for
They're
the
trying to
first
sleep.
time since the beginning of
And
time,
I don't blame them.
the Watchers got annoyed and they decided to silence it so they could sleep again. As they drifted closer, we learned that this spark was indeed our reality. So to get rid of the light, the Watchers tried to poke it and taint it. But they were always too big to get through and deal with it themselves. So instead, they reached into reality, stole something, corrupted it, and released it back.
Right.
In hopes that it would destroy the rest of the reality.
Right,
But
okay.
even that wasn't too successful. Eventually, the Watchers started whispering into the light. And the Ice Witch known as Lysandra answered. The Watchers promised her people immortality and great power. In exchange, they asked Lysandra
I wanna
to
react
prepare
to her
world
story
for the coming of the
and her
Void.
voice
In
lines.
secret, behind the backs of her two sisters, she agreed.
Okay.
The Watchers empowered the strongest of their followers and turned them into the Iceborn.
But she betrayed
And soon enough, the Watchers broke into
Watchers.
reality in the Freljord.
Right.
With it, Lysandra's allegiance with the Watchers was undeniable. But as the Watchers rose for the first time, Lysandra got to see how horrifying they were.
She's like,
and
nah,
she
I'm gonna
realized
change
they
my
came
mind.
here to destroy everything.
Yeah.
In desperation, Lysandra sacrificed her sisters and the Iceborn to use their magic to freeze the Watchers beneath the ice. But
Yeah.
even that magic wasn't enough.
She's still there
Beneath
holding
the
them
ice,
back.
The Watchers were only sleeping. They would break out should they try to wake up.
Hmm.
So these days, Lysandra is kidnapping the surviving Iceborn. She freezes them in her fortress. She is then using their inherent powers to reinforce the ice.
Wow.
And she is feeding their dreams to the Watchers to keep them asleep.
Oh.
As a bonus,
whoa.
Lysandra is
okay.
killing anyone who remembers the old days, and who could spill out that she actually kinda betrayed all humanity.
Yeah.
See,
okay.
this setup on its own is enough to support a raid.
Yeah.
Let's say we raid the Frostguard
It's a very
Citadel,
interesting story.
which is where Lysandra is keeping the Watchers frozen. First, we get there by crossing the Howling Abyss. This is the bridge that is incredibly iconic for League of Legends players.
Oh, okay.
This is where you play ARAM. I bet you never noticed that at the end of the bridge, you can actually see the entrance to the Frostguard Citadel.
Oh, that's cool.
And in fact, the ghastly shopkeeper is one of the soldiers who remembers the coming of the Watchers.
That's cool.
After getting inside, we would fight Lysandra's frozen thralls. These
Thralls?
are trolls that Lysandra twisted herself to serve her.
So they're like
but they are
Iceborn,
also supported
kinda?
by the Harbinger of Thralls. Whatever that
Oh.
is. Then we would fight through Lysandra's army of the Draklorn. These warriors dedicated their lives to Lysandra, knowing that they are protecting the world from the end of everything. Next, we would face the most mysterious creatures of the Freljord. We don't really know what they looked like in their pure form.
Okay.
We only know what they look like after they were corrupted by the Watchers. And
Oh.
these would be the creatures with their very interesting names. There is She Who Wanders,
Oh, those creatures.
They Who Endure, and It That Stares.
These boss fights would
Whatever
be
these
incredible.
creatures used to be, now they are titanic, with their I-beam disintegrating reality.
They all have eye beams.
Then of course
oh,
we
that's
would have
nuts.
to get past
okay.
Lysandra herself
Yep.
before we arrive at the Frozen Watcher. I think it's likely that we are going to fight one of these. And
Okay.
what's cool is that even though this is the toughest enemy this universe has to offer,
Right.
even if we defeat it, we don't really defeat all the Watchers.
They can still come
That's
back.
the clever
Yeah.
backdoor of this universe. We can't destroy them all.
Right.
They are the primal force. There is an endless sea of them. If anything, our reality is a parasite in their void.
It'd be an endless threat
if we
of
defeat
Watchers,
the Frozen Watcher,
like,
all
in the
we
future.
really do is plug a hole.
Yeah.
But the Watchers continue being a threat.
Yeah.
Anyway, this Watcher looks strange, doesn't it? It's not really the floating
I see a
eye
face
that you
up
would
here.
imagine. Well, that's because, as it is with all the League of Legends stories, there is a twist. You see, just as the Watchers are able to corrupt a being, they
Mm-hmm.
are also open to being corrupted themselves. The process always comes from both sides. And
In what
so,
way?
the more the Watchers interact with humans, for example,
Yeah.
the more human-like they become themselves.
Okay.
And since the Watchers in the Freljord were frozen there for thousands of years, Legends of Runeterra shows us that once they would break through, that's what they would look like. They would have many human-like limbs.
Human-like,
The story told
yeah.
us they have fur from all the animals.
Huh.
And they even have a creepy fake face.
Yeah, there's the face
So
up there. Okay.
no, this is not what a pure Watcher would look like.
Right, okay.
This is a Watcher tainted by the people of the Freljord. Also, you might be wondering, how do we actually beat the most powerful being in this universe? Well, that's where the stories collide. First of all,
really?
Lissandra would be the key to freezing the Watchers. She would have to be on our side at the end there.
Yeah.
Also, the primal
Ornn?
god Ornn constructed the bridge leading to the Citadel.
Okay.
And this bridge was used as a magical seal to help keep the Watchers down there. So Ornn himself would help us.
Okay.
But most importantly, there is another massive storyline that is in Shurima centered around a Voidborn known as Belveth. Because this video is already way too long,
We plan
just
on reacting
super
to her
quickly.
stuff soon.
You know how the Watchers themselves got tainted when interacting with reality? Down in Shurima, a small pocket dimension formed between the Void and our reality. It was sort of like a cancer growth on the Void. In fact, if you dive deeper into this, you may realize that this is directly correlating to real-life cancer. If you don't know, cancer is just living tissue that decided, hey, I don't want to die. And that's exactly what happened here. As the Void started consuming people in Shurima, it got tainted by the people and it formed self-awareness.
And that's where Belveth
because
came?
this cancerous growth inside the Void needed to represent itself, it grew a creature known as Belveth.
Yeah.
A Voidborn that looks a bit fishy because she consumed a harbor, but also she doesn't actually like the Watchers because the Watchers want to end everything. And all Belveth wants to do is to live. And so these days,
that's why she
Belveth
doesn't like
is
the
consuming
Watchers.
entire cities at a time.
Oh.
And she is rebuilding everything with the information she got.
Okay.
With her ultimate end goal being to rebuild all reality. So that she could be a reality, and she would be strong enough to fight the Watchers. Of course, at this time, she doesn't really have all the information gathered. So whenever she's recrafting cities and people, it all looks uncanny.
I know she's a newer
However,
threat.
at this point, she consumed hundreds of thousands of people. And she's using all of their brain power, so Belveth is very smart. Now, the reason why this storyline is important is because Belveth once talked to Kaisa, and she offered her a deal.
Yeah.
If mortals help Belveth consume reality faster, she would spare them to be the last she would consume.
Yeah, but
Belveth
that's
said
not...
that she did the calculations, and she knows that humanity could never beat her. But at least, with this deal, she gave them the chance to create a weapon or maybe find a hero who maybe could slay her. She knows they could never achieve it, but she is willing to give them the chance. And you see, this is where we can get another twist.
Yeah.
This wasn't confirmed, this is purely my theory. But I believe that there is a way to destroy Belveth. See, Belveth believes that we can't beat her. But the fact is,
she's probably
used
wrong.
Hundreds of thousands of human brains to figure it out. But the humans can't even comprehend the power of the Celestials.
Right.
So I believe Aurelian Soul could destroy her. She just doesn't have the brain power to figure that out herself.
Okay.
So what I think is going to happen is that at some point we are going to beat Belveth. She realizes she was wrong. She realizes that humanity is stronger than
agree with
her
his
when
theory.
fighting the Watchers.
100%.
And she decides to help us destroy them. So should we ever get a raid on the Frostguard Citadel,
She'd sacrifice
I wouldn't
herself
be surprised if
to, like, help
before
us, probably.
that we got another raid where we delve into Belveth's little pocket dimension, and with her help, we move to the north.
Yeah, okay.
Or, you know, we just destroy her. That would be way cooler. So all of that is still just a wild theory.
No, I like
The
her
fact
helping us.
We are fighting the Watchers. That is inevitable.
Awesome.
And that was all the raids I wanted to show you. All of them are supported by the lore, and
I wonder what other three he left out. He said at the beginning of the video that there were 10.
Up to Riot whether they want to do them or not. Except the last 3 raids. Those are happening. There is no way around it. But because people are going to freak out, let me give you some honorable mentions.
Oh, okay, here we go.
This universe also technically has the Grim Reaper. While
Kindred?
they may have many forms, the most well-known form of death itself is Kindred.
I don't think that'd be a raid or anything.
Good reason to fight them though.
Yeah.
Since death isn't really an evil entity in this universe, but you know, they exist.
Okay.
I would also love to fight against Vladimir's Hemomancers.
Okay.
We could also get a raid on the Ursine, with Volibear being the final boss.
Whoa.
The
Whoa. Okay, Volibear.
primal god of wilderness. In the east, there is also the mysterious demon known as Ashlash. A 7-handed
Ashlash. It's a demon?
liquid demon that is locked beneath the earth, in a place known as the 7th layer. Neela is currently wielding its power, and it looks like a setup for the future. Also, there is Fiddlesticks, the primal and most powerful demon
of fear.
on Runeterra. Fiddlesticks itself is just a puppet. The demon is what you can see inside the cage. But because Fiddlesticks is roaming around the world, I couldn't really figure out a raid set.
Yeah, I don't know if he'd be a raid boss.
But you bet we are fighting him at some point. If you want a creepy video to react to, find Fiddlesticks cinematic. Simply said, the lore supports so much more than what I showed you today. And in the future, I can make a smaller video.
This was a really good
I
video.
cover the dungeons of this MMO. All being theoretical, of course.
Right, they'd just be a little bit smaller bosses.
That's it. I'm running out of content, so let's see. What do we have next?
But hey, my question: why do you hold the lav mic?
S-fan.
What do you?
Yeah, why does he hold them? Wait. Okay, that was an awesome video, folks. Very cool. So let's do a tiny recap. So it's Mount Targon with Aurelian Soul being at the very top and like the Arbiter and stuff like that. We probably wouldn't fight Aurelian Soul like he was saying. We'd fight like the those two other, there was like the Scourge and this one that looks like him. Very cool. Oh yeah, and then so next we have Darkin, which was Zolani and Aatrox. I think that'd be really cool. And my favorite, the freaking Chicken Ballista, my new favorite character in all of League of Legends now. And then Naramazeth, yeah, with Xerath and all of his army and stuff over there with the corrupted Renekton. I could see us like possibly like, let's say the raid and the story itself would be like going over there and fighting Xerath and Renekton with Nasus like helping, and then maybe we'd like be able to free Renekton's corrupted mind at the end of the raid. That'd be something really cool. I could totally see that, right? And then like Nasus and Renekton would be back together in Shurima, free of mind and everything. And then this one was actually a surprise. This one, at first, I was like, really? A raid boss in Zaun? But I agree that it'd be very cool to have like a raid that's a different setting, not such a like god tier level boss, not like you know, like Xerath or like Aurelian Soul style, but like very more down on the streets level kind of raid boss in Zaun. I really think that'd be cool. And then of course Viego. This one is the most fleshed out story in all of League of Legends. There's a book that I found out called Ruination that we're definitely going to pick up and read whenever I find the time for that. I still need to read the comics and everything like that, but I do want to read the book. This is more Viego. Oh, and then we have Mordekaiser. Of course, Mordekaiser would be next. Mordekaiser, we just reacted to the voice lines for Mordekaiser. I highly recommend you go check that out if you haven't already. But yeah, I mean, by the end of that video and by like just reading the biography of Mordekaiser, I'm like, okay, he has an army in the afterlife, and that's just where his story ends. Yeah, of course they're going to do more with Mordekaiser's story. They're not just going to stop it there with him having an army of the undead or whatever. So that's definitely going to be something that comes in the future. And then, yeah, the Watchers. I mean, this video is very good. It makes complete sense. The Watchers are the biggest threat, technically. You know what I mean? And we've heard the story about Lissandra holding them back. I didn't know all the stuff about her, like, actually using the Iceborn's magic to keep sealing away the Watchers by, like, using their dreams and stuff. So that was, not only did we learn about more of the, I didn't realize, like, when we started off in Mount Targon, I didn't even know the Arbiter existed. These stone creatures, like all the different kinds of creatures that exist in this world is insane to me. And it's very cool that Necrit learned about all these creatures and just like knows the name of all of them and everything. You guys let me know in the comments which raid bosses or raid area you think you would be the most interested in. So like whether it be Mount Targon or the Darkin or the Ascended and stuff like that, or the Zaun one with Renata. Or I mean Viego. I don't know how, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people enjoyed the Ruination story, so you guys probably would say Viego or Mordekaiser. Or if you guys think the Watchers would be the best raid. Yeah, let me know in the comments. I think all of this was super cool. And what's insane to me is all of this makes sense. Like this 100%, all 7 of these raid bosses or raids that he brought up, or these stories, I guess, in the League of Legends lore, 100% make sense to put in an MMO. Like none of them seem far-fetched. None of them seem like all off the wall, like too crazy. Nothing. Like it all honestly would make sense. I don't know what like the first raid would be, like if they would start off with one and then, you know, obviously release them as time went on. Very cool. I don't know if Viego would be like a good one to start off with, or Mordekaiser or the Watchers. Maybe Viego would be a good one to start off with. Like he seems like he's the biggest push in terms of story and everything with the Ruined King game and a book. So, all right, folks. Thank you for watching my reaction to Necrit's video. Thanks to Necrit again for making these awesome videos that increases our knowledge of the lore. If you liked the video, please leave a like so other people could see it as well. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe. We do a lot of reactions for League of Legends stuff. And eventually, I'm going to react to all the voice lines for every character and their biographies and their abilities. It's just a lot of characters, guys. 160 something, right? So we're going to get there eventually. We just started doing this about a month ago, not even. So again, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next reaction. Peace.